So I was born in Central California, but I moved to Virginia when I was really young, like before I was even one. And I lived in Virginia from when I was 1 to when I was 5. And I say that because when I was in Virginia, there were a lot of other Black people in Virginia. And so I don't think I really thought much about, I mean, I was also 5, but I don't think I thought much about my Mexican identity that much in Virginia, or my racial identity that much in Virginia, because I blended in with everybody. But I became very aware of both my Black identity and my Mexican identity when I moved back to California, and I first lived with my grandparents, who were Mexican migrants, worked in the fields and everything, and my grandpa barely spoke. He spoke English, but barely. And so when I got to California, there was like this reality check of like living with my grandparents, being like, oh, I am Mexican, like I'm living with my family and they're making tortillas and like all this, and I'm like surrounded by the culture. And at the same time, at the same time, it was the realization that I'm Black too, because in my hometown there's not that many Black folks in general, and the majority of the population is Mexican or Mexican American. So when I was at school, everybody made it known that I was like, the only Black girl in school, me and my brother. And it was like something that was always pointed out to us, and something that was kind of we were made fun of for, and people would even make fun of us in Spanish, and I would kind of like understand Spanish at the time. Like now I speak both pretty fluently, but at the time I'd like understand, and I would know they would say stuff. And I'd be like, I know you're saying that, and I'm half Mexican too, so I feel like it was both the coming back to California and being surrounded by my Mexican family of like, wow, I'm also Mexican too, and I'm really proud of this. And at the same time, like everybody pointing out that I'm different than them, and kind of yearning for that side of my community of like wanting to be around more Black folks. Luckily I had my dad, so I feel like he was that sort of information, I guess you can say that information of Black culture in my life as I was growing up. But that's really the moment where both happened at the same time for different reasons, but it was at the same time. And as I grew older, I felt like when I was still in Central Cal, I had that sort of internal desire of like wanting to prove my Mexicanness to people, of like, oh, I'm gonna learn Spanish, and I wish that I was Rodriguez instead of Bailey so that people would just know, and things like that. And as I got older, and especially when I went to college, I went to USC, and I was in a program that was closely related to NAI. We were like both in kind of the same classes and stuff, and NAI is the Neighborhood Academic Initiative. So basically a lot of the students are like first generation Black and brown students. And all of those students in my cohort, they were all like, Ebony, you're one of us, like the brown students, the Black students, and that's where I felt like, oh wow, I'm like accepted by everybody and all the people, and I just really liked that. And I think going to college and like being in that community specifically just really made me be like, I don't care if people, like I know I'm Black and I'm Mexican, and if people don't want to believe it, then they don't have to. But I'm pretty like firm in my identity now, and I'll talk to a random person in Spanish, and if they want to respond to me in English, I can, but I'm gonna keep talking in Spanish because it's how my brain processes it now. I would say, my mom actually, she was like, I feel like every Black or darker skinned kid growing up has like internalized colorism. And I remember like when I was younger, there was a moment, and like also like all my cousins most of my cousins, except the ones that are here, are half white, half Mexican. And so like I'm surrounded by like a lot of white cousins, and so we would all go out and like they would want to go get a tan. And I'd be like, oh, I don't really want to go get a tan. and I'm like, I want to get darker. And then my mom would say like, but the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. So she would like reaffirm that it's like fine to be darker, which I really appreciated, especially as like a non-Black parent. And I think because like I always grew up with my mom's side of the family, with my grandparents and all my cousins and all the tias, mostly tias, one deal. And I think they never were just like, you are Mexicans, because it was just always around us, and it was always like the Noodle Sunday, and it's in Porterville. My hometown is really Mexican, so it wasn't. Nobody really had to tell us. It was just like always there. It was just more so us telling out other people like, oh yeah, we're also Mexican too. Or if I make a joke about, if I'm like in a new space and I make a joke about being Mexican, I have to clarify, like, oh yeah, I'm Mexican too.
I just want to say that your film was beautifully shot. I was watching from the back right here because I'm like kind of doing a report on it. Fantastic. I just wanted to say.
Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Ronnie.
Thank you.
Mine was real short. The logistics of how long it took, and what did you leave on the editing floor that you wish could have gone?
Good question. Yes. We shot so much for this film. It could be a feature if we wanted to make a feature. For the grant that I got with Latino Public Broadcasting, it had to be a short, and it had to be 15 minutes, so we actually extended the time a little bit. But I'll go to the logistics first, and then I'll answer the second question. For the logistics, since it was part of the grant, we were given the grant at the end. We were given notice at the end of 2022. I think we were given the grant by the beginning of 2023, and I finished the film by January of 2024. So the first half of 2023, I was filming on and off between Tijuana, Mexico City, and Cihuatanejo, Guerrero, where they all three live. And then kind of the second half issues when we were doing post-production, editing and color and things like that. And I did a lot of that too in Mexico, because I just kind of wanted to keep it as a Mexican film. And yeah, and then 2024, we were kind of finished with the film, and then it premiered end-ish of 2024. Yeah, so it's been kind of going and different festivals. It's been in New York. It was in Pan African Film Festival last year in LA, and yeah, I've been really happy with where this film has gone. And the second question, one thing that I left on the editing floor that I really would have liked to include is we actually had a fourth character, and we had to cut her out because of just the timing of wanting to make sure every character had like a historia digna, like a dignified story, but still keeping kind of within the limits of the time limit. And so she's from DC, and she had a restaurant in Mexico City called Cocina. So it was the first ever soul food restaurant in Mexico City. And the reason why I decided to not include her was because we already had two people in Mexico City, and because I was really kind of dead set on making a separate thing just about her and about her business and everything. But then unfortunately her business closed down end of last year. But it's still, like, if you look it up, Cocina, like, there's been reports on it and things like that. And I think she has some desire to bring it back and maybe like a different conceptualization, but maybe not like a brick and mortar how she had it.
Yeah, I had a question. So one of the things that we all saw, like the one scene where Janae had that picture with random people, like, can we take a picture with her? And I was just wondering, like, you know, was that a feature that is pretty salient in the experience where, like, people just randomly come up, hey, we want to take a picture with you, and then like, oh, hey, come to here, come to this, come and like interact with us. And then as they kind of start to realize, oh, this isn't a novelty, this is an actual person, do some of the doors kind of fade away, and all of a sudden you're just kind of left like, oh, okay, like I thought we were friends, but I guess the novelty of like having this person come over drops out. Like, was there any experience like that?
I don't think I've had an experience like that, but I think that goes. So I think for me, that's a very interesting way to think about it. I feel like it's happened like that, but not necessarily like that. In my personal experience, it hasn't gotten that far because I've actually, like, the more time that I've spent in Mexico, the more comfortable I was with boundaries. So the first year or two, when someone would ask if they could take a picture with me, I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, but I'd be kind of bothered by it. And then I started with doing my films and things like that. I started being in more community with Afro Mexicans, with people who are born and raised in Mexico but who are black, and they're like, no, we don't want our picture taken. Like, we're from here. Why are we treated like we're extranjeros or foreigners? And we shouldn't be treated like an object. And so when they started saying that, I'm like, well, it already bothers me anyway, so I just started saying no. And I say it nicely, like, oh no, gracias. So I don't ever let it get that far into like, oh, maybe we'll, sometimes people will actually ask me and I'll say, no, gracias, and then we'll just keep talking about other stuff. And then we become friends that way, but I think like also setting the boundary for me has been important because it's like, it's a small way to show them like, yeah, we're human too, we're not just people that you can take pictures of. But cada quien, like there's other people that, like Janae, there was actually a whole discussion after that because if you notice she was with her friend, but she was the only one that took the photo because the friend said no. And the friend is Afro Mexican. And after that, they had the discussion about, oh, why did you say yes and why did you say no? And Janae's like, I just feel like I'm not like from here, so I don't feel like I have the right to tell them no. And I'm like, well, they just want to take a picture. And then also kind of the Afro Mexican friend was like, no, I don't want them. I don't want my picture in somebody's random phone. And so yeah, I think that different perspectives have been interesting. But it's hard to say whether it gets to that point of like, oh, the novelties fell off, and so now I just don't see. I'm trying to think of like other relationships where that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not romanticizing. I'm gonna go to Mexico where we're all like togetherness. No, we have not built that at all.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of romanticization, and I think specifically with Black Americans, especially Black Americans who think about going to Mexico as a sort of way to get away from the US or to escape racism or whatever. I think that there's like a level of privilege even with being Black American, and I say this as myself, someone who's Black American who lives in Mexico City for a long time. And I also, like, this is my own, like, conspiracy theory, but I also think that there's, like, a level of, there's a certain barrier you have to experiencing racism when you don't speak Spanish. And I've noticed, like, even Janae spoke more about how she experiences racism because she speaks Spanish, but Kamara didn't speak as much about it. And as Kamara was living in Mexico longer and longer, and as she was getting more comfortable with her Spanish, she was starting to speak more about it after we filmed with her. And I remember a year after we filmed and we showed her the film, she's like, my opinions have changed so much since we filmed. Yeah. And so that's like my conspiracy theory, but just folks that I've noticed, like I have a friend from the UK too who lived in Mexico City, and she said the same thing where she didn't start realizing like the comments and things like that until she started learning more Spanish. But I also think that aside from that, there is a level of privilege for us as like American citizens where, once even if we're treated bad, once people know that we're American, there's like a slightly higher treatment, or there's at least like, oh, then that means you make dollars. And so then you start getting treated like somebody who's like a rich person. I think with Janae's experience, there's like her experience is like really different from mine. Because most of my friends in Mexico City were local, but I also went to grad school at a local school in Mexico City. And I didn't meet many other Americans. I was also like living off of the grad school stipend, and so I was not making dollars. And I feel like that was another kind of like people who make dollars hang out at that restaurant. The people who make pesos hang out at that restaurant. And I think like Janae, like she actually quit her like American job to just be a full-time DJ in Mexico, and so she's like starting to feel the difference, the economic difference. Like, oh, I can't be hanging out with my American friends all the time, economically. But I think it's like with her, it's like there's the part of being black and so always being seen as different and always feeling different, therefore not feeling like she can integrate herself into Mexican society. And then also she's from Portland, where there's not a lot of black folks, and so even coming to Mexico City where there's not a lot of black folks, but there's that community of black expats that she's like really kind of been into. Like she's like, I've also found my people that I didn't really have in Portland. And so it's like, she's comfortable in like the black expat space, but she still has that desire to integrate more with the local community. And I think she has. Even a bit in the film, we actually lost an entire day of footage of Janae, because our SD card just pooped out at the end of the day. And so anyone who does film, like always film on 2 SD cards. After that, I always film on 2 SD cards. But yeah, so I think that in her experience in general, and I know I'm speaking for her, but this is like things that she's told me where I feel like she's feeling like that whole conflict of, I want to, like I'm in my comfort zone a little bit with the Black Americans, but I also still want to be with my Mexican friends, but also how, and that whole thing. And yeah, she's still in Mexico City. She's like thriving as a DJ, which is pretty cool.
I love your montage at the end of all the people who went from America to Mexico, live in Mexico. So I love that. And I wanted to comment on the world famous Debbie Allen. So I don't know if you
learned
that she too, or because of her mother, they wanted to escape racism. I forgot how long they lived in Mexico. And she always talks about how she walked into a bar in Mexico or not a bar, but a restaurant, and was able to order a hamburger without discrimination or having to be discriminated against. So I was just hoping if you could, if that's somebody you would like to talk to make another film about, or to include her in the documentaries, and how accessible she is now that she's living in LA.
Right. I have no clue how accessible she is. But I did actually learn about her story after I made the film. Like I think after we even made the credits, and I was thinking like, oh, that would be cool. But I have been, because we filmed so much with this film, and I do have like an idea to make, I don't know if it's like a feature or if it's a series. I still haven't like developed it that much, but I would definitely like to expand on this kind of content of Black Americans who have lived in Mexico and who live in Mexico, past and present, because there's a whole history too of just Black folks in general who come from the U.S. to Mexico, like since enslavement. And so I think like exploring that whole lineage would be really, really fascinating.
I know that you said your film was more focused on like the society and how you wanted to express that more. I'm just wondering what is like your favorite takeaways from the both sides of the culture?
My favorite takeaways of both sides of my culture?
Yeah. Like so like from the Mexican side and from the US. Like what would you say is like kind of like the best of both worlds?
Food. I say what I grew up with both cultures. I feel like I grew up mainly with Mexican food. Because I didn't even grow up speaking Spanish. Like I learned Spanish as I got older. And I grew up listening to Black American music. And I feel like those two things today are still very key to like my day to day. Like I'll be making like my default food, what I make like in a day is Mexican food or Mexican style food. And what I listen to as I'm making the food is like hip hop or R&B or something like that. So those are like I would say those are the first things that pop in my head when you answer that, when you ask that question.
Did you pick up any of the Chilango words and terminologies?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, my friends say, even to this day, that I still sound chilanga. Like I say, ay, qué chido. I don't say cámara, but like I sometimes I'll joke, I'm like, cámara, way. You know, like, or I'll do the, I don't know if this is chilango or if this is just Mexican, where like you'll make a joke and you go, ah. Like, yeah, I picked up a lot of little things like that.
Cool.
So just a personal observation, I'm kind of dating myself, but one of the first times that I did go to Mexico, I went to a wedding in Acapulco, and I stayed for a couple of weeks. I should have, but I was like, no, I gotta stay. And I encountered Black people, right, that were from there. So when I went to go back to the family where I was staying with, I said, hey, you know, I saw some Black people. And they said, they're not Black. I said, what do you mean they're not Black? They said, they're costeños. Right, you know, I was like, but they're Black. But they're costeños, they're not Black. So I think that has evolved because I think there's that movement in Guerrero with those particular people that have now, in the past, I guess, decade or 2 decades, have embraced their Afro-ness.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. There's actually been a whole movement to get, like, from Afro Mexicanos to have Afro Mexicanos recognized, like, legally, officially by the Mexican state. So it's been like a movement that's been decades in the making. But in 2019, Afro Mexicans, because the Mexican Constitution officially recognizes like different ethnic groups, like indigenous people as like an official, and their official different pueblos as different ethnic groups. So in 2019, the Mexican government finally recognized Afro Mexicans as part of the Mexican Constitution as like an official ethnic group. Which what that means is that in Mexico now Afro Mexicans, kind of like in the U.S., how there's scholarships for like Latino students and scholarships for Black students, like that, things like that. Officially, like if there's this official government scholarship for Indigenous students, there's also one for Afro Mexican students, or a resource to go into a certain pueblo and to, I don't know, like develop cultural things and things like that. If there's something for Indigenous folks, then there's also something for Afro Mexicans. And so that was like a really, really big feat by the Afro-Mexican community to actually convince the Mexican government to officially recognize them. And then that's also really important for education. So now Afro-Mexican history is in different Mexican textbooks all over the country. Now there's more stories about La Historia de Ganga, for example, he was an enslaved person from West Africa who was brought to Veracruz and who led this like slave rebellion in Veracruz, and then founded his own free town, like Maroon Town, and it's actually the first one in North America. And so now he's like in different textbooks in Mexico, which he wasn't before, just like little things like that where they're becoming more officially recognized. And because they're becoming more officially recognized by the Mexican state, it's becoming more known culturally across Mexico. So now, like people, it's funny that you actually mentioned that because when I was doing a screening in Fresno with my other film from Marindo, a woman who was from Guerrero, she told me the same thing where she had a friend who was from La Costa, who was darker skinned and had curly hair, was like Afro-Mexican. And everyone would ask like, oh, where's she from? And she would say, they'd be like, oh, is she African? And the woman talked to me, she's like, no, she's not African, like she's Mexican. And then the woman talked to me, it's like, now after seeing your film, like I can tell people, no, she's Afro-Mexican. So now there's like language for it. And in the same pueblos, they're like, soy negro, soy Afro, and I think it's funny, there's like a debate even between like whether somebody wants to call themselves negro or Afro, or is Afro something that's like imposed by academia and negro something from the pueblo, like I've heard that a couple of times. And there's also this movement of like saying like soy negra is like not a bad thing, like it's like the same as just calling myself black, like it's not a bad thing. And so When people say like, tú no eres, like people told me that even like in Mexico, like, tú no eres negra, eres morena. I'm like, I'm black. Like, it's fine. You can say negra. It's not a bad word. So yeah, I think that's like evolving, definitely, especially in the last 5-ish, 6. Oh my gosh, 7 years? It's 2026. Oh my gosh. I think she was featured on PBS. Yeah, her restaurant was really big in 2023 and 2024. I believe she closed at the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025. But she's still kind of on social media and still will do pop-ups, things like that. She's great, and her food's good. If she has a pop-up, I'll let all y'all know because her food is really good. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts? Questions?
I'm wondering if you come across like maybe any like stats about how many people actually do stay or have plans to stay. Like I'm curious about Janae and I'm forgetting the name of the person who's a mom. Like, do they have long-term plans? Like, yeah, we're gonna stay in Mexico like for the rest of our lives. You know, or is there some research that maybe people later and I don't know, like in the winter of their life when they move back?
That's such a good question. I couldn't really find many stats about, like hardcore stats about the Black American experience in Mexico. The one hardcore stat that I found was the one that I put in the film where there's 11,000 people born in the US who now live in Mexico. And actually the reason, this is what I forgot to mention in the last question, the way that I found that stat was because in 2020, Mexico, for the first time, finally registered Afro Mexicanos, Afro Descendientes, and Black people in their census. So when they registered Black people in their census, they also asked you where you were born. And so from that kind of cifra of like 2 or 3 million Black people in Mexico, it was 11,000 that were born in the US. And so that's why that cifra is there. But other than that, I haven't really found any hardcore stats. I do know of a PhD student who's doing more quantitative research on Black Americans in Mexico, so I would like to connect with them more. And in terms of like their personal stories, I think Janae is in Mexico indefinitely. I think until something takes her elsewhere, but she's a dual citizen. She works in Mexico. She DJs in Mexico. I think she's there indefinitely. And Kamara actually moved back like 6 months ago. She moved back to the US because of her family, because one of the daughters, who actually don't see in the movie, but wasn't allowed to go into Mexico. And so they moved back to the US. They moved to Minneapolis. And they actually lived in Minneapolis before moving to Mexico, because that's where Martin's from, and they lived there during 2020, and then now they're back. Yeah. So they've been back during interesting times.
I know as a dual citizen, we have good opportunities. So for Afro Americans to go there who do not have that, there are specific skill sets that allow them to find employment and they're committed to it.
I would say most African Americans that live in Mexico work in the US somehow. I'll say most of them that live in Mexico City are probably digital nomads. Technically, Janae started as a digital nomad because she moved to Mexico City with an American job. And once she saved up enough and she felt comfortable to do full freelance, that's when she quit her job. Kamara would cross, because she's one of Ticana, so she would cross back and forth. And most folks in TJ that I've met cross back and forth to the US to work. And I also think that's an interesting like demographics difference because a lot of in Mexico City have like higher paying jobs because they work like remote desk jobs. And most not most, but I would say a decent amount of folks in TJ would be like more working class because they're having to cross to work like a hands-on job. And that's also like the difference in culture. Like in Mexico City, the black expat groups, they're partying every day. I have like them on my WhatsApp, and I'm just seeing flyers of parties on like random Tuesdays, and I'm like, wow. Whereas in TJ, like I don't see people partying every day like that. So yeah, I think this is like also just like an observational thing that I've noticed. But in terms of like getting residency. So, like Patricia, she became a citizen, so she actually was like a teacher, or she was a teacher, she was a professor, and then she opened up like a tourism, like hotel educational business. I've met other folks that when like they go to teach English and then they get their temporary residency. I had temporary residency through my student visa. But now I'm about to be a Mexican citizen, finally, through my mom. But that process takes so. If you don't have your dots, your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and every name has to match every birth certificate and every birthday has to match, then it's such a long process. But you can also become a resident if you move there and you make, I think it's like $70,000 a year, and you prove to the Mexican government that you're making that much amount. So they give you temporary residency, but you're not allowed to work in Mexico. I think those are the way. And then you can, once you're there for 4 years off temporary residency, you can apply to be a permanent resident.
Well, most countries have those gatekeepers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of course they want to protect their own population.
Yeah. There's a big loophole in terms of Americans, because you can go to Mexico for up to 6 months without any sort of visa. And so a lot of Americans in general, will just go for 6 months, come back, and go again. Yeah. And though I do think it's I think in the past like 2 or 3 years it's become more discretionary, so you're not guaranteed the 6 months. So and I've actually heard this with people, like I've had friends, like Black American friends, that are like, they only gave me like 3 days, like, is this racist? So, yeah, it just depends on like the guard that lets you in. Like if they want to let you in for 6 months, they will, but if they want to let you in for 3 days, they can.
That much discretionary power.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
That's sort of the mordida that I was saying.
Do you happen to know if, is it Patricia, the woman in Veracruz, or the woman
In Guerrero, yeah.
in Guerrero? Do you happen to know, like, so she mentioned being politically active, if she is like a fan of like the Morena Party?
Oh.
I don't know if that came up at all, because she's been there through.
Political parties didn't come up actually with her. I could see her collaborating with, I don't know if I could see her collaborating directly with the Morena Party, but I could see her collaborating with folks that collaborate with Morena Party.
Coalitions.
Yeah, coalitions. But she collaborates a lot with Afro-Mexican civil, ¿cómo se llama? ACES, Asociaciones Civiles, civil associations. That work with different political parties to get more visibility and representation. So she works with them, or she feels like she can work more directly with them now that she's a citizen. Whereas before, yeah, you're not. When you're in Mexico, which I feel like is different than being in the U.S. In the U.S., I think anyone's allowed to protest technically. But in Mexico, if you're not a citizen, you're technically not allowed to protest because you're not allowed to be involved in political things.
You're considered a foreign guest.
Yeah.
Capital letters.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question. I kind of want to ask her. Any other questions or comments?
Any future projects that you want, stories you want to talk?
Yes. No. I actually just finished another documentary that I made after this one. It's a different topic. And I just premiered it in New York in November. And it's about an artist who lives in the Bay Area who plays the banjo and makes banjos and reclaims the banjo for the Black community. The banjo is originally a Black instrument. And so that premiered in New York. It's gonna screen in Palm Springs in March and also North Carolina, and then it's gonna be on PBS, I think actually, no, I don't know if it's it's gonna be on PBS this year. That's what I can say.
Is it as long as this one, or is it longer?
It's short. It's a short.
Short?
So
Okay.
it's 15 minutes. It's part of a series. I can tell you this. It's part of a series that, like a mini series that's on PBS called In the Making. And so each episode is about a different artist of color who's in the making of being an American master in the U.S. So it's part of season 4. So that's like the last short that I've done. That I feel very close. It feels very close to this one because they're very close in time. It was like I finished this one and then started the next one right away. But also I work with like similar people. I feel like the style is very similar, and even though the theme is different, it's still, reclaiming Blackness in some way, which I really enjoy. And the banjo technically it's not direct Latin roots, but the banjo has roots in the Caribbean. And so there's always like some sort of connection to the Latinx population. And besides that, I've thought of making this into either a feature or just a series. I've also thought about going deeper into one of the stories of the people that's in the credits. The first woman that shows up in the credits, I'd really like to go deeper into her story, maybe like an animation. I've also thought about, or worked on sort of on and off in animation with queer migrants at the border, and I have, it's kind of all like Blackness at the border sort of stories that I've been thinking about recently, but they're all in very baby development.
If you wanted to read this again, what would you be able to?
That's like no public broadcast. Wow. As of now, well, it's gonna show in Connecticut. I think in like a week. It's still in screening festival phases. But if anyone here works at a school or works at a university and wants to show it in their class and wants to invite me to speak about it, you can hit me up at any time. You can come up after me and talk. But yeah, if you want to show it in school or like a community space or anything like that, you can come talk to me afterwards. Any last thoughts?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. We're gonna wrap up a little early, but feel free to stick around if you guys want to mingle, if you guys want to talk to Ebony a little bit more. But yes, again, if you guys ever want to visit La Plaza, you can visit our website at lapca.org, and we have platforms on social media as well where you can see other free programming like this one as well. So thank you again for everybody for coming out, and thank you again, Ebony. It was a pleasure.